How's the book tour going?
It's going extremely well, much better than I thought.
Well, you broke Amazon today, so that was good.
Yeah. I asked him to say that right away.
He actually did.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
It was a big deal, though.
Maybe you want to say, I did break Amazon today.
But it,
Wow! Yay, Maddie!
but it is doing better than I think everyone knew it was going to, because it's you and it's this story that you tell, and it got a lot of press and attention. But it actually is exceeding expectations. And why do you think this story, besides, you know, a beloved guy from Friends, is resonating? And people are so curious to hear it.
I think almost everybody's had their lives touched in some way or another by addiction. And, you know, the word got out that I was writing a book and really talked about it, really talked about what I went through with it and how I came out the other side. I mean, what an example of me coming out the other side. I walked out, there's 1,500 people, everybody's clapping. And
Yes.
I'm sure there may be people in the audience who've actually read the book already. I'll ask you a question. So, for those who haven't, as you know from what you've heard about it, a harrowing story of addiction. Somebody who was taking 55 Vicodin a day. You've been in detox over 65 times, first time at age 26. There are also, within this book, incredibly fun stories about backstage at Friends and other parts of your career. But it's also it's a story of a really singular childhood and a life as an actor. And we'll cover all of that tonight, but what was it that made you think now was the time to write the book?
Well, the main answer to that is that I felt very secure in my sobriety. And that was the first time in a long time. It took very hard work to get there. Because you can't write a book like this and then, you know, appear drunk at your local bar. So
that would also get covered, yeah.
Well, maybe I should try that.
Yeah. No.
The highs and lows of my life have been amazing, and I wanted to talk about everything, and I wanted to talk about the lows because no matter how far down the scale you've gone, you can help someone who's gone that far down the scale. And I've been down the scale, you know. Malcolm Gladwell, I have my 10,000 hours of suffering and rehabs and the way rehabs work and all these things that I wanted to talk about. And it just, I think the reason it's caught on with people and touched people's hearts is that they all, like I said, they all have, you know, a brother or a grandfather or somebody whose lives have been ruined by addiction. And the common kind of thought or the thread is just stop. This is ruining your life. Just stop doing it. And people have to understand that it's not that simple. You can't just stop if you have the gene of being an addict.
What was the hardest part to write?
It wasn't that difficult to write. There were definitely difficult times, you know, talking about the night that I almost died in the hospital and what they did. And whenever you talk to a doctor and you say the list of things that went wrong with me that night, they all just say, "Oh, that's a dead person. Nobody can survive that." And I was put on an ECMO machine. Which it stands for something, but I don't know what it stands for, but it saved my life. And it does all the work for your heart and your lungs simultaneously and kills almost everybody that's put on it. When I went to the hospital, there were 5 people put on ECMO that night and 4 of them died. And I survived. So the immediate question becomes, why? Why me? Why did I survive when all of these other people passed away? And you have to come up with an answer, and the answer I knew right away was in the area of helping people. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do that, but I knew that that's the biggest juice that I get and have gotten in the past, was helping people. So the idea of writing a book came across my brain, and I wrote it, but it wasn't that tough to write it. What was really difficult was to read it. And I had to do the Audible version of it, and so I had to read it, and I've been avoiding reading it, and then a couple of nights before I had to do the Audible, I read it in one big gulp. And it's like I disassociated a little bit. I honestly, and this is not a joke, I honestly was like, oh my God, what a horrible life this man has had. And then I realized, it's me, this is me talking about it. And you know, I got grateful, and the book ends with a long grateful list, which is really important to me. And but reading it was the dramatic thing. Like that night, I literally could not sleep in the same room as the iPad. I had to take the iPad and put it in my living room so I could get some sleep in my bedroom, because it's too much massive injury and what a tortured life it's been for me. On the other side of the coin, of course, it's been wonderful, and there's been amazing things that have happened to me, and I'm grateful for all of it. But through all of it, there was this progressive disease of alcoholism that had to be a secret. I couldn't tell anybody. And because I couldn't tell anybody, because I didn't understand it myself, I was like, well, that was a fun night. Why can't I stop thinking about drinking, though? And that's when I was like 22, 23, and you know, I tell a story in the book that's like good, and then I go, but why can't I stop thinking about drinking? And because it's a secret, nobody helps you out with it because you haven't told anybody, so you feel very, very alone. And it wasn't until somebody called me out when I was on a movie set, and they said, when you're done with this movie, I know you're sick, and I'm taking you to a doctor. And I kind of opened up to that person. That's in the book too. Gabby, who was my first girlfriend, she just didn't believe me. She wasn't taking any of my bullshit, and she said, you know, I'm taking you to a hospital, and that's how sobriety started for me. But I had no idea how long the road would be.
You talk a lot about, you know, there was this, you know, your dream was to go to Los Angeles, it was to become an actor, it was to make people laugh, and then you got Friends. And it was this massive hit, your life changed pretty much overnight. I think sometime early in the run you were dating Julia Roberts. I mean, everything was going really well.
That's true.
But you talk also about, and this is, you know, when you talk about the disease of addiction, it's, of course, there's the desire to take drugs or drink, but it's also, the disease is also about the neuroses and the fears and the insecurities that fuel, you know, that need to sort of obliterate yourself.
Right.
And you talk a lot about how you felt like a fraud during those early years, all that success and all that attention that you dreamed about, and then felt like a fraud. Where do you think that came from?
Well, it came from having core negative thoughts about myself. I'm too needy, I'm not enough, I don't matter, and then getting this extreme amount of attention, but secretly kind of feeling that way about yourself, and it doesn't add up. And I was extremely happy when I got famous, because all I wanted was to get famous. And then after like 6 months, I walked in my house, I was like, uh-oh, this didn't work. This didn't fix what's inside me. This didn't do what I thought it was gonna do. And that's a night you drink, you know? That's a night, because it's, you don't know what to, I didn't know what to do next. I did everything that everybody told me to do. I had the American dream happen to me. I'm having a creative, wonderful experience every day, but I can't stop drinking. You know, if the police officer came to my house and said, you know, you have to stop drinking tonight, I would start packing for jail because I can't stop.
You're very articulate about certain things in your childhood. You're number one, I should point out, because we're about to talk about your parents, and you were very careful to not blame your parents
Right.
for your problems, and there were many great things about it. But like everybody, you had a difficult childhood, but yours in really unique ways. In that, number one, you were a sickly kid, and you were given a barbiturate as a very, very young child for being colicky, I guess it was. And as you've talked to doctors and people over the years, do you think that wired something in you that you were given that kind of drug so early?
Absolutely. I still can't sleep more than 4 hours a night. What he's talking about, of course, is a colicky kid, and my parents took me to a doctor, and this is why I don't blame them, because it was 1969, and a doctor in a white coat said, here, give the baby this, and it'll make him feel better, and they didn't know what to do, so they did, but what they were doing, without knowing it, was giving a 30-year-old baby phenobarbital, major barbiturate, for 30 days. And I could look at some childhood pictures and see my head like squinched. I'm like, I'm high in this picture. You know, I was 32 days old, you know. But I did blame my parents for a while, and that was a very prison-like experience, and it's not right. That's what I would have done too if the doctor had given me this and not warned me about it. But the ironic thing is, once I got old enough, I just picked up where they left off. I've been on phenobarbital 40 times since then, you know?
There was also rooted in your childhood this kind of need for attention.
Yeah.
Right? Your father was this very good-looking guy who went off to LA and became the Old Spice guy. You stayed in Canada. Your mom became the press secretary for Pierre Trudeau, the prime minister, and just sort of became wired to think, unless I'm Pierre Trudeau, I'm not going to get attention from the person that I depend on to give me love. And that seemed to have a pretty strong impact on the course of your life.
Yes, it did. I mean, my mother was the kind of person who was so beautiful that she would walk into like a hall like this and all the heads would turn and everybody would stare at her because she had a very important job. She was basically like Allison Janney in The West Wing. That was her job. And I would be behind her in the ballroom and say, "Can we turn around and pay attention to me for a second?" But, you know, she was too in need and couldn't do it. And my father was an actor. He was the Old Spice guy, and, you know, he was a gorgeous guy. What I learned early on was to not take women back to the house. Because if I heard the term, "Where's your father?"
You almost called the book Unaccompanied Minor.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, my parents, my mother lived in Canada, lived in Montreal, and my father lived in Los Angeles and had started a life in Los Angeles. And when I was 5 years old, they put me on an airplane from Montreal to Los Angeles when I was 5. And it just, what they did was they put a thing around my head, like this name thing around my head that said unescorted minor. And I was incredibly scared, really scared. And I had this sign on me and my feet didn't hit the end of the chair, you know. And it ends up kind of having a neat story with it. Like, whenever I buy a house or wherever I change where I live, I always make sure that there's a nice view. The view is the most important thing. When I go look at a house, I go right to the window and I look at the view. That's what I care about the most. And I realized that's because when the plane was landing, you could see the lights, the city lights, and I knew, oh, I'm about to be parented again. And so when I look out at the ocean or I look out at the city lights, it calms me down because I feel like I'm being taken care of. And unescorted minor, of course, is what it said on the sign. So, you know, that was a possible title for this too. Also Jurassic Park.
Let's take it.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have any dinosaur.
You're also very honest in the book about, and this is something that people discover, anybody who's dealt with addiction in their own life, that all...
Vodka was an odd choice.
Not
Okay.
You're very honest about the benefits of the disease. In that, you make a joke that idea that you had to entertain everybody and you had to please everybody ultimately earned you $80 million. It also made your life a living hell.
Yeah, it did. When I was in my 30s, I realized that I don't have to be funny all the time. You know, and what a break that was. It was like, oh, just calm down. You don't have to be funny all the time. People still like you if you're just, and it must have driven people crazy to be around me. Just stop with this, with all of these jokes. Just stop, just talk to me. You know, and, you know, once I did that, I was able to calm down and I was able to know that maybe I am enough without doing that. And I realized that that was the truth, and that and the things the core beliefs that I had were what I said before. I was too needy, I wasn't enough, and I didn't matter. And my whole life was about trying to have those three things not be true. And when I had a drink or I had a pill, I didn't feel like that anymore. And that's why I was so, you know, destined to be an addict and take all of these things, because to some people, and I like saying this because people understand it, when most people have a drink, they feel a little goofy or something, and then they stop, and then they drive home, and then they go to work the next day. When I have a drink, all of a sudden, for the first time all day, the whole world makes sense. And if that was, if everybody felt that way, everybody'd be drunk all the time. You know what I mean? And I had that, and then I got to a point where I needed it, and all the things that, if you wake up and you need 55 Vicodin that day, that's a really hard day, you know? So I had 8 doctors going, and fake migraines, and fake back injuries. I would sit in MRIs, not injured, you know, just to get the pills if somebody who was injured, you know.
Go to open houses.
Oh, yeah. I would go to open houses and go to their bathroom and open the medicine cabinet and steal pills out of the medicine cabinet from the open houses, figuring that, and I looked at the dates, and if the dates were old enough, then I could take like 7, and if the dates were new, then I could only take 2 or 3. Figuring that as I drove off, they weren't going to go, Chandler just ripped off pills?
Chandler, big.
Yeah. Stole from us? Well, he's, you know. But that's what I would do in order to get the number up.
You, the first time that you picked up the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you discovered this quote, and you say in the book that it really resonated with you. These men were not drinking to escape, they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the moment that you realized you were an addict. Why do you think, what was it about that statement that resonated with you?
Well, it made me understand right on the spot that I was an alcoholic, that there were people that wrote this book in 1939. There's 10 million to 20 million people who suffer from this. And it was a great moment because I was no longer alone. I did think that I was drinking to escape. I didn't think I was drinking to overcome a mental disorder I didn't even know that I had. I mean, how confusing is that to a 24-year-old, you know? And I forgot your question.
It was why did that statement resonate with you? But you answered it.
I just proved it.
Yeah. He would be, yep.
Yes,
Okay.
it was great.
And this was fairly recently. This was after, years of treatment and many relapses and detoxes. And he said to you, I think you like the chaos of your addiction. I'll paraphrase, you're addicted to the drama of these relapses. And you were furious,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that statement now?
Well, what do I think about it now?
Yeah.
It's not right. It's not right. And I was really upset at the time. I said, what are you talking about? This has ruined my life. This is something that has completely shaken and ruined my entire life. Every story I tell about every single year of my life is horrible because of this. And he said, this is your second time here. You like the chaos. You like because when you're here in this place, you seem like a pretty happy guy. And that was actually true. But that was true because I'd been there more times than anybody else, so I was on the side being able to help people. You know what I mean? I was like, come here for a second, I'll explain this to you. And, I'm not addicted to chaos. My life is a lot calmer now, and I